There is a demon that haunts us. It creeps into our homes, into our relationships, and it destroys our lives. Where love once lived, darkness now occupies. Uncertainty, fear, despair, and broken souls. Men, women, and children live this nightmare every single day. Some with no relief in sight, others meet their demise. When violent abuse comes from someone who has promised to love and protect you, it can be a terrifying shock. For some victims, this initially unexpected behavior is simply written off. It is seen as a one-time thing. Once it starts to become a recurring problem, unfortunately, sometimes excuses are still made or those affected are fully aware of the issue but feel as though they have nowhere else to go. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the scourge of domestic violence. Thank you for tuning in to Season 1, Episode 4 of Cut Deep. Domestic violence includes any number of attacks on a person with whom the attacker has an intimate or familial relationship. The most commonly understood version includes a husband forcibly striking his wife, but this conduct is only one aspect of the crime. Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used by one intimate partner against another to maintain, gain, or regain power in the relationship. It can involve any individual or combination of physical, sexual, and psychological attacks, as well as economic coercion. The conduct can be with anyone living in the same home that is related by blood or marriage. The term can even include people in a dating relationship. If you are afraid of your partner or someone related to you, chances are you have been the victim of some form of domestic violence. Abusers share behaviors that are designed to control or intimidate. These often include accusations of infidelity, blaming you for the abuse, criticizing you frequently, keeping you from accessing cash or credit cards, tracking all of your spending, preventing you from working, keeping close track of where you are and who you are with, embarrassing you in front of others, preventing you from eating, sleeping, or getting medical attention, forcing you to have sex, physically punching, pushing, or kicking you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight the conversation is domestic violence. We will take a short break and return with our first guest.
Right now, many people are trapped in their homes with an abuser. This is the shadow pandemic. In one weekend, calls to domestic abuse helplines in the UK went up by 65%. In the US, Asia, and pretty much everywhere, reported numbers are rising. These aren't just numbers, they're people you might know. If you think someone is in trouble, check in on them. Ask them if they're okay and if everything at home is okay. Educate yourself about domestic violence. Know the details of local services like helpline numbers or shelters. If she tells you or you suspect that her life or the lives of her children are in immediate danger, call the protection units or the police. The shadow pandemic is spreading right now. Let's help each other safely right now.
Welcome back to episode 4 of Cut Deep. Tonight, the discussion is on domestic violence. Because this topic is so heavy and so in-depth, it will be covered in 2 parts. Part 2 will run in Season 2 of Cut Deep. We will interview 2 entities tonight, the police and psychological counsel. Our first guest this evening is Sergeant Kendolph Bobb of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. Sergeant Bobb, thank you for joining me here tonight to discuss this very important issue. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening, Cindy, and to our listening audience.
Okay. Can you just introduce yourself for our audience?
Okay, my name is Kendolph Bobb, as you rightly mentioned. I'm a sergeant of police and a supervisor at the Family and Juvenile Unit of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. So this unit investigate cases of all sexual assaults, child abuse, and serious forms of gender-based violence.
Okay. I consider you to be the forefront of domestic violence, meaning you're called if something happens. What does it feel like, or what is it like to be at the forefront of this?
Well, every experience are different, and you learn from every time you responded to a report of domestic violence, as we discuss the topic tonight. And you always have that experience of where you first have to give all your priority more so to the victims. Victims in the sense where persons may be injured or need necessary help immediately. Various times, frontline officers, uniform officers will respond, and they are trained in order to, to detect who are the victim and who are the aggressors or abusers in every situation. So there are times it can be difficult because police can be called at a scene by someone anonymously and then turn up persons in the household is saying that, I never called the police, why are you guys here? And sometimes we still have to take the report case by case because sometimes you can leave the scene and then you get another call, something seriously happens. So we still have to investigate it by letting persons know in the household, whether it's a victim or the elderly or children, have to have that conversation.
Okay. Before we get too deep into the conversation, can you share some statistics on domestic violence in the BVI?
Well, domestic violence in terms of statistics, cases that are being reported to the police. Almost every day we have a case of domestic violence.
Every day?
Almost every day.
Almost every day.
Whether it's just a simple dispute or violence,
Physical violence.
Physical violence, sexual violence, and so forth, psychologically, economically, violence, and so on. So the question was always asked, how do our statistics looking? And if I may tell you from based on what we have here, 3 years ago, 2018, from March to about April, we have 10 cases. And in 2019, it rises to about 29. And this year, a lot of people question what the statistics look like during the lockdown.
Right.
And
that's my next question.
So persons may say that, that there might be a spike in rises of cases. I would say no, there's no spike or great in-depth rise of cases. So we only have between March to April, during the lockdown, 30 cases. So last year we had 29.
Between March to April this year,
correct,
you had 30 cases.
Correct.
Between March to April last year, you had
29.
Between March to April.
Correct.
Okay.
And overall, for 2019, we had 196 cases. And that ranged from various offenses that been committed, such as murders, we had 0, rape, which is a sexual assault, 1 case, serious assaults like injuries, wounding, and so forth, we had 44 cases, and minor assaults, 99 cases, and damage to property, that is criminal damage, 34 cases, and threats of violence, which is 13, theft, 0, burglary, breaking into someone else's property, who is in a relationship, 2 cases, and armed with an offensive weapon, which is 3 cases. So that's amounted to 196 cases for 2019.
All right.
And in 2018, we had 159 cases overall. In 2017, which was 150 cases. And a lot of people question why it was so low. And we know, based on the natural disasters we had, a lot of people did not see it fit to report. Some might have been migrated from the territory to other places. So there was a decrease there, and then it increased in 2018 and in 2019.
For a small place as the BVI, those are high numbers. Would you say that?
Yes, correct.
Those are high numbers.
Correct.
With the fallout from COVID and having to deal with that issue, what specific types of domestic violence have you seen over the past couple months?
Well, from what I see with statistics, most of the calls were merely disputes, arguments,
Okay.
relationship-wise in terms of spouses, boyfriend and girlfriend arguing over other relationships. One might see their phone with a WhatsApp text message comes in, and they have those sort of arguments.
Right.
We have some few assaults where it became physical. So that's basically what I've been seeing, looking at the statistics.
Any increase in child abuse?
I would not say there's an increase.
No.
There are still reported cases as usual. And maybe some might be happening and it haven't reached the police as yet.
Right.
Because most times you can see the evidence, let's say a young girl under the age of 16, you might see results of pregnancy. And that's when it comes out to light. But to say that there's an increase of child abuse reported cases, I would say no.
Not as yet. Okay. We talk a lot about domestic violence between, well, mostly on women and children. But we know that there are domestic violence cases for men as well.
Correct.
Do you receive those types of calls? How frequent and how are those dealt with?
Well, straight off the bat, I will tell you not quite frequent. Not quite frequent. And there are cases of male also being abused by their spouse. Mm-hmm. Correct. But to say we have a lot of cases reported by men, no. And simply, for some reason, I believe we as men do not want to come forward to the police to make a report. It's either we are thinking that the police is not going to listen to us, or we think we are too macho, or big men to be say, macho, sorry, to say that we're going to report it.
Yeah.
To
so
the
there's
police
a little bit
about,
of embarrassment.
Correct.
There, and so they're not coming forward.
And if I may go forward, because
Sure.
over the years I've been hearing, which there's some evidence of that, where men are saying that whenever they report to the police laugh at them or run away from the station. I must tell you that we have been changing that mindset over the years, because our training for police officers, frontline officers, is up to capacity, where we train officers to know that anyone can make a report of domestic violence, and anyone and everyone report must be entertained and dealt with professionally.
Well, I think that's really great news.
Yes.
That's really good news, because we know that is indeed one of the problems, that men are afraid to come forward. They're afraid to be laughed at or not taken seriously. So that is something good to know, that you guys have been taking training to deal with all abuses. What are some of the obstacles that the police in particular face in dealing with domestic violence?
Most I would say is persons having, we like to see more persons, victims, coming forward and report. Okay. Persons may give a lot of reasons, a number of reasons why they don't want to report. But we encourage them that there's a safe environment for them to come and report.
What are some of those reasons you're missing?
This might be a shocking for you. Of recent, I heard a lot of victims say that the reason why they don't want to report cases to the police is because their business is now on the street, because they are seeing whatever they are reporting is in the media, right?
Right.
And the public is now trying the case, saying things that are not true in relation to what actually happened. So when they see the storyline of their reports, and the media houses that we have now, especially the online news, they're seeing the bloggings. They say that, okay, doesn't make any sense to do this thing, because nobody's believing them, nobody's there to protect them, and that in itself, have some people don't want to report, because this is a big problem for them.
Yeah. Is there legislation when it comes to these types of cases that the blogging is cut off, or is that only for children, if children are involved?
Well, it's most of for children involved, but we do encourage
The
the
media
media
houses too.
houses
So
because we're not saying that you're not supposed to report, because the media is there to inform the public as to what is going on. But in the way sometimes
Yeah.
it is published, and we try to ask them not to have persons blogging,
right.
you know, because
right.
the blogging sometimes can be so detrimental.
Yeah, well, blogging is a
destructive.
painful thing,
Yeah.
right? It's a painful thing. When you see people actually talking your story, and I call BVI bloggers the worst bloggers you can find, because they say some of the most vile things. And so I could see that as a hamper for people actually not wanting to come forward. And that's unfortunate, because this is where we can step up as a society to help a victim. And this is where I guess law comes in, where this can be taken to the House of Assembly and legislation adjusted to cut off blogging on cases like these.
And sometimes some of these matters has to go before the court.
Yeah.
And you know, before it gets there, it's like the public is trying it.
Yeah, and we're the same ones that have to go and be the jurors on these cases.
And that is not the only reason. There are other reasons too. Sometimes the confidence that people may want in the police when they are responding to these reports, in terms of, can I trust you? You know, can I trust the system? In terms of when it goes before the court, will I get justice?
Right.
You know, and
domestic violence, to fall back in the same situation.
Correct. And domestic violence, most times I can tell you, victims do not like the police to be involved, because they know that the abuser is going to be arrested, because this is their partner, this is the one that they loved, and they always been hopeful that the matter can be resolved by them getting back together, instead of going to the police and get them thrown into prison and being locked up. You know, so these are some of the reasons sometimes.
At what level is someone arrested?
Well, the police are mandated to always arrest if there's evidence of domestic violence. Every time they responded to a scene and there's evidence of domestic violence, they are mandated to arrest.
Okay. What does evidence mean?
Evidence mean there may be injuries involved. There may be threats, words that's been used, sexual assault, if there's evidence of that, damage of the household, properties being damaged, and so forth. So all these are things that the police will look for when they go to a scene, so that it can be said that someone must be removed from the premises.
Okay. Removed or arrested? Are they the same?
Well, yes, it is the same.
Okay.
Because removing someone is restraining their liberty by arresting them and take them to the police station.
Right. So if I got into an argument with my husband and I felt my safety threatened, I call you guys, you can arrest. Or you have them removed. Is there somewhere else you can go, or?
So you're asking if there's threats of violence.
Yeah.
And you report that to the police.
Right.
And
are those grounds for arrest?
Well, there is ground for arrest, but it also will have to be based on the amount of evidence that the police can, be able to obtain from you, to know that you are at risk.
Okay. You
have been threatened, and there are serious threats here, so we have to take that person away from the scene to the police station.
Okay, understood. Are there limitations based on who may have called you regarding a domestic violence disturbance?
So you're actually...
Meaning, can anybody call?
Anyone can call and report any case of domestic violence to the police, and the police must respond. All we need is the information where it is occurring, the place, and then the police will respond. 2 officers or more must be able to respond to such reports.
Okay, so there must always be 2 officers?
2 and more.
Okay.
2 and more.
Okay. Do you think the legislations we have on the books have teeth?
Well, yes, I would say that in terms of our criminal code, with all the necessary offenses, legislations, where we get things like ABH, assault, occasional actual bodily harm, as long as evidences are there. We do have domestic violence legislation, which we had in 2011.
Right.
And that speaks a lot about safety and protection, where persons can go before the High Court, the Supreme Court, and apply for protection orders. And that order will be issued to the abuser. And if it's been violated, the police are mandated now to arrest such person. And it's been working quite well because a lot of people have taken the opportunity to get protection orders from the abusers.
Yeah. And does it work?
Yes, it works.
It does work.
It works.
Okay. Is there anything you think can be added to legislation or improved to make them even more effective, or something that?
Well, there always can be improvements, but at present, I know that the present legislation are working. It's working quite well. What I will more so say, if we can improve on our services, our service delivery from the other agencies in terms of how we can assist victims. We now have a problem where victims, when we are trying to take them to a safe place, we need what we call a safe house for victims. And this is something that the government, I know, been looking to some years ago, just before the disaster. And a lot of things have been put on hold, but we do need a safe house because persons or agencies like Family Support Network assist in those areas in terms of assisting victims by taking them to a place of safety.
Right.
But it's now becoming overburdened for them.
Yeah.
Because it need finance, it need money to do such thing.
And that's
So
what
if-
I've learned.
yeah.
I've learned that from FSN that they have been trying to get a safe house. I see that they've been trying to raise funding for that. I feel like social services is underfunded. As I look at it and they try to do their work, I feel that they are somewhat underfunded. But me myself, I did a little bit of research on the safe house issue. And I think FSN and social services, I think they only have up to 5 days funding if they had to take someone out of a situation.
It's a limited time.
Right. And that is not a safety net for anyone that feels they can actually step out of a situation and be safe and comfortable and be able to move on or change their life, right? I was wondering if you may know, you may not know, I think it's about $5,000 or $3,500 per month. You can secure up to a 5-bedroom house. I think this is something that the government can consider. What are your thoughts? Because
Yes.
I think at this point, we probably won't be able to find or build a safe house. But I think we need something immediately.
Yes, I agree with you. And not just the government, there are persons out there who can step up to the plate, business owners, persons with business who can assist, with having such a place where we can help fund the bill, to do such a worthy cause. Because, as I said, it's very much overburdened for FSN because it's not just paying for the accommodation, but also for clothing, food, and other things that is
Correct.
necessary. So,
Correct.
yes, I agree, and that is something that we in discussion with throughout the other agencies as to what we needed in the BVI.
Yeah. Is domestic violence an actual criminal offense?
Yes, it is.
It's a criminal offense.
It's a criminal
Okay.
offense.
All right, good. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Listen, you want top of power?
You want top of power?
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top of power?
Welcome back to episode 4 of Cut Deep. Tonight we're speaking about domestic violence. Tonight I have Sergeant Bobb with me, and we're bringing on now the Apostle Curnal Fahie, and we're just going to continue the discussion on domestic violence and hope that you can take away, content that you can use and support those persons that are suffering from this cause, okay? Welcome on, Apostle.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. One of the challenging things that I found out is that the BVI does not have a family court. How does that affect how you do your job?
I don't think
or the results in cases, etc.
Well, they do. These cases do go before the court, the magistrate court, and they go through the normal process like day-to-day court.
Okay.
We're not at the stage as yet to have that facility as family court, but that is also on the table.
Okay.
Because we are getting some new structures, some new buildings, and I'm sure that there are plans to have all these other courts, which is family courts, deal with children and the entire family.
So when you say we're not at that stage yet, do you mean?
They're not in place as yet.
It's not in place.
But it's on the table.
It's
on the table, yeah.
Okay. The pool of attorneys in the BVI handling these matters is small. I reached out to one in particular that is involved in this work. And although she was unable to be here due to her schedule, I asked her some questions and she was able to send me some responses so that we can get a little bit more insight from the legal perspective on domestic violence. Her name is Attorney Akila Anderson. You're familiar, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, so I said to her, there isn't a family court in the BVI that does that hinder matters in any way. And her response was, there is no family court, and I firmly believe that there should be. It is an area that will be better served by specialized training and priority access in terms of timing at court and provisions for vulnerable witnesses. At this time, it is dependent on the discretion applied by individuals within the court system, and so it varies. I have been involved in cases that were dealt with appropriately and others that were not. So that was her response in terms of a family court. We spoke about the safe house. What are your thoughts on the safe house? Can you introduce yourself to the listening audience? I apologize.
That is fine. Certainly, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Cindy. I'm Apostle Curnal P. Fahie, the proud apostle overseer of Transformation Church International, married to one Tara Fahie and Princess Baby Daniela. In reference to what you were talking about the family court, I think it's really needed. It's very necessary. Again, some sensitive cases, they didn't have to be tried in the open. Again, so something like that will help to facilitate. People will be more brave to come forward. They will get some cases will get the attention that is needed and the focus that is needed.
Right.
Again, especially when children are involved and when there's extra sensitive matters. Like the attorney rightly said, sometimes it deal on person's discretion. Some people are like, they can just deal with it. But not everybody, they might look strong on the outside, can deal with a situation. Regarding a safe house, it is very necessary. Again, the burden being on FFCN and smaller organizations. Well, I'm a pastor. Local churches try to do that. And again, the BVI is so small. 5 days is nothing.
Correct.
And the cost of living here is expensive. So that burden being weighed on FFCN or a local church, it needs to be coming together of various agencies, the government, private sector, and nonprofit NGOs coming together. It is so necessary. For example, we have somebody battered and bruised, the police try to get them away, efforts and get involved. After 5 days, then you have to send them back home.
Right.
5 days, the man might still be angry. He might have been looking, and a particular location will have to take a lot of money, securities to completely protect it, or you have to shift it periodically. Or the other thing would be, we have to then send persons overseas.
Right.
So a safe house is so necessary.
Okay. You, besides being a apostle in the church, this is actually your line of work.
Yes.
Can you just talk to the people quickly about that? Because I'm sure they're wondering,
Why am I here?
why?
I have a degree in counseling. I have specialized training in domestic violence and several other areas. I work here locally with the government with Partnership for Peace. When men batter their wives or significant, their partners or significant others, or domestic violence happens within a home, they are then, once the police goes to them and they go to court, then they are mandated to go to a training. It's a psychoeducational program where we teach them how to deal with their anger, their behavior, the patterns, the cycle. It's a 16-week program that is funded and developed by UNIFEM, and they use counselors from the Caribbean who is in our region, who can understand, because our culture is different to American culture, European culture. And so there's several of us in the BVI have this specialized training in this particular area, in addition to what our degrees and our focus were that help in this particular area. So I regularly deal with this. So I'm court mandated if I find out, even in a local church, that somebody's battering somebody. I'm court mandated, I have to report it, and they just might have to end up in a class that I teach.
Okay. What is your view on, not your view, but from your position, have you seen a rise in people needing counseling post-COVID?
Yes. I was telling my wife, how did this thing happen? I expected it. The fear coupled with frustration. Sometimes spouses or even parents and children a lot of time don't spend time together.
Right.
So when the husband and wife have a disagreement, or partners have disagreement, one leaves and go by a friend, or they leave, go to the rum shop or somewhere else, but you're at home. So I expected a rise. And sometimes people have not learned the skill of communicating or conflict resolution. And conflict is a everyday thing. Opposing views, opposing opinion, and the whole purpose of conflict is to come to a resolution that we have a disagreement, let us work it out. And a lot of persons during this time were angry. Sometimes they didn't understand why the government did stuff. Some person got laid off. And anger is an emotion. Everybody experiences it. They should look at it. Their anger is not a good thing or a bad thing. You know, it is how it is then used. Like money is not good or bad. So you can use anger for good. Somebody is taking advantage of somebody, you jump in, and anger can then be bad, used in a different way. It's caused by frustration, resentment, promises broken, annoyance, and and stress above all. So during that time, people were so stressed. So anger flared up, and then we had. So I saw a lot of persons calling for assistance, for sometimes I couldn't get to
counseling.
them. I couldn't get to them, so I had to give them tips or advice over the phone. And then once we are open, then some persons came to see me.
Sergeant Bobb, I've been doing a bit of research, not now, before too, but so for the show, and I find that there's a really small pool of attorneys practicing family law in the BVI. Why do you think that is, from your perspective?
How should I answer that one? I have known, other than the lawyer that you just mentioned, Asha Johnson. She do quite a number of those work for persons in the court. It's something I want to say that I didn't say earlier when we talk about courts, because we're not just looking at the magistrate court. A magistrate court is more so when the police arrest a person and take them before the court.
For bail.
Most of these matters, especially through civil legal system, goes through the Supreme Court, the High Court, where persons are being represented there, legally represented. And most of these cases goes through much faster to the High Court, and so that they can be, settled at some stage with both parties. To answer your question directly as to why, I just can't answer why much persons are not taking up the role to assist. We know we are still at this stage talking about legal aid, legal representation. And that is something, again, is in the pipeline, where the government and the agencies coming together so that we can have a legal aid process to assist victims. And not just for victims of domestic violence, but for juvenile offenders. When juvenile are being committed crimes and they need proper representation, the legal aid system will assist them with that area in terms of, because they are young, They don't want to say something that can be detrimental to them,
Right.
to the police. So they need that proper representation first and foremost before they say anything, because they're still young. They don't know about the system. They don't know anything about law.
Yeah.
So that is on the table. And as I said, a lot of these things put on hold since after the disaster, 2017. So
have they been put on hold since the disaster?
well, there were a lot of consultants came in and were looking at the necessary legislation, protocols, and policies that we need to put in place. So I'm quite sure that PS is still looking into those things so that the minister himself can bring them back to cabinet so that we can have these things approved.
Can I share?
Sure.
I think what it is that a lot of time family law, monies would not be there.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get more monies in criminal law and financial law. So a lot of times, sometimes some lawyers would have been frustrated over the years. Before we did the Domestic Violence Act in 2012, it was not necessary when a police went to a house that they automatically arrested the perpetrator, somebody who seemed to be the perpetrator. So a lot of time lawyers got involved and then the woman called up the case, or it was a man, the case was called up. So some people got frustrated. And then a lot of times there's not finances. And a lot of times when there is domestic violence, because domestic violence is a pattern of behavior and coercive control, like you shared before, for a person in a relationship to gain control or regain power and control over somebody. Sometimes that person, they're financially abused, they don't have money to pay a lawyer.
Yeah.
So where's the lawyer getting monies from?
Right.
How am I going to get my retribution? So a lot of times people don't go into that. So that is a major reason.
I know my sister that she did quite a bit of it because she studied family law. As well, in addition to criminal line, she did quite a bit of pro bono cases.
I understand.
Quite a bit of pro bono cases.
But when you're trying to fix a family, that will be necessary. And that's why I focused when I was in school in marriage and family therapy. Because if you're trying to fix a person, it takes longer.
Right.
So if you counsel a person and they go back to a house where there's chaotic and there's problem, what could happen in 6 months will take 2 to 3 years because you are not touching the other people.
Yeah.
So family relationship, or again with family law, it looks at it holistically.
Right.
So we need more of those things.
Yeah. I asked attorney Akila Anderson what her thoughts were on how the system works and can be improved. She said, of course, a family court. I also believe that the supportive organizations such as Social Development Department need more resources, clearer guidelines, maybe laws. And this relates to the organizations individually as well as how they relate to the court and to each other. I have been involved in matters where there was debate as to which organization was the lead agency on a matter. Again, lack of clarity and the existence of lacunas in the law lead to inefficiencies and matters slipping through the cracks. More thought needs to be given specifically to vulnerable older persons. Same observations where responses are individual driven. I am not suggesting that many matters slip through the cracks or that the treatment of domestic violence cases in the BVI is inefficient in general. I have no cogent information to give a sufficiently informed opinion. I'm saying only that this is what results from gaps in the law and a comprehensive framework which ties all relevant organizations together. So she's saying, which you're saying as well, if the organizations can probably work a little bit more cohesively together, more cases can be effectively tried. I said, do you think there's a way in which the community can become more involved? And I'll ask both of you the same question. She said, yes, absolutely. Trained volunteers might help, and of course, community reporting. One of the issues that brought this domestic violence conversation to the forefront for me, I could have left it for the second season, but there was a case a few weeks ago. I don't know if any of you saw it. Well, you would have seen it. It was where a businessman was arrested for abusing his wife. Now, one of the things for me, I didn't do the march on Saturday. And that is not because I do not support Black Lives Matter or that movement. I do. I stand with it. I stand by it. I share things on Facebook. I understand the movement and I support it. However, I feel like there's so many pressing things in the BVI that we do not stand up for. And I feel like domestic violence is one. And when that case came out in the paper, one single newspaper carried that case. One single newspaper. Now, if you're talking about a prominent businessman in the BVI, I think that's headline news, right? With domestic violence. I think that is headline news. You had one online paper that carried it. No other news agency in the BVI carried it. I watched that story for a week to see where it would go. And then I waited to see what the arrest blotter, is that what it's called? Would feed out. And normally when something goes to court, you get bail, a story comes out in the paper. But what happened with this case is that you had this story over here from one newspaper, and the newspaper followed up with the arrest blotter with the same person. I think I have those images if they want to put them up, but it was hidden in another story. And for me, as a woman, that was very sad because it said to me that there's no support from the community, especially. People turn a blind eye, okay? Because one of the things that was said in that news report is that, you know, this husband said, I will make you disappear. And to me, to say something like that and you get this kind of reaction from the community, it says that he could make her disappear. I wouldn't want to come forward if I was that woman. I wouldn't feel safe to talk to anybody. And I think maybe a lot of women go through that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this domestic violence situation and to get some more input. And so my next question would have been, what can the community do to help you?
What can the community help to do to
How
help?
can they rally around the agencies to make this demon go away? I know it's not going to fully go away, but we have too many cases. We're still in secrecy and we think it's okay. And the newspaper told me they had hundreds of calls to pull the story. I mean, what kind of community do we live in when that is what we're doing? That we can't stand up behind a woman that was battered by her husband. We're just silent. Everybody's silent. It really annoyed me. And so I couldn't go march for anything else.
So I'm not sure if I know about the specific case, but even if I know, I would not be able to comment on it because I think you said that it's before the court.
Yes.
But to answer you forward in those things, in those areas, we do need the community support. And if we don't, abusers get that sort of freedom and rights that they can
feel
do
empowered.
whatever because it's not a concern, it's not a community concern. October every year is slated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And sometimes we do a lot of training. We go to churches, private and public sectors, you know, and do a lot of sensitize the public about domestic violence. And sometimes, you know, only a few people shows up. Again, the problem I have again with men do not want to show up to none of these, you know, training or whatever we have.
Well, they're not going to show up, right? Because it is a problem in our community, whether they're actually hitting the woman or, you know, holding back monies or mentally, you know, stressing that woman out.
Yeah, but we don't want to have it to say that it's only men are abusers.
No. Men
but
and women.
I'm just saying that
women.
I'm just saying that in the way of process and not taking the necessary information that we will be given to help, you know, with their problem or situation they have with domestic violence. So we as a community definitely need to take it more seriously because, again, it comes back to what you were talking about, posts who are blogging. There's a lot of interest when it comes to blogging of a particular case. Yeah. But when it comes to take the necessary information to help us as a society and as individuals, nobody's showing that sort of interest. So again, where do we stand? Yeah. Is it that we just be nosy about people's business, or are we concerned about the demon that you was talking about?
Well, this is a lot of what we get in our community, right? We have a very gossipy, I call them gossipy, a very gossipy community, and everything is about gossip and da 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 da. As opposed to, wow, did you see what happened there? How can we mobilize around this woman? Instead, we just, and I got a lot of, because I called people, I knew who it was. From the moment the report came out, I had an idea of who it was. I didn't want it to be the case, but I had an idea because I had gotten reports before. I don't know why people think they have to come and tell me everything. But I've gotten reports before, and I've also gotten reports from his employees on the way he treats his staff. So those reports have kept coming to me. And then when that happened, I thought, let it not be that. But I had a feeling of what it would be. And so I called a few people, and you got the but, and but, and I said, but what? But what?
Can I share? I think what it is, we have to come to the point that we don't look at these situations as somebody else's problem.
Correct.
So that is what permeates in our community. It is somebody else's problem. It is never a problem to a lot of people until it happens in your house.
Correct.
Until it drums the train track or it drums the medium in the road and it comes over to your side. We have to come to the point that we are our brother's keeper.
Yes.
In, do unto others as you have them do unto you. A lot of times you'll hear people crying out, I want you, somebody's murdered, something happens, and you're asking the public to come forward to say something. But when it is your turn, when you can do and say something, we turn a blind eye.
Correct.
So I think what a lot of it has to do with lack of education and sometimes empathy. And sometimes they just don't know. Sometimes people don't want to get involved. Like he talked about sometime earlier, this sensitization of the police, sometimes information. When you call, before you finish texting or you finish calling, people already know that you reported such and stuff. So some people don't, out of fear, out of backlash, the blogging, what people would say, is a tattletale, you need to mind your own business. So people don't do or come forward for multiple reasons. Yeah. But a major part of it is we have to understand what domestic violence is and the extent to how it can impact not only the persons that experience it. These people are attached to people. This is somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother, somebody's cousin, somebody's friend. So what happens, we are jointly fitted together. So if you give me a minute, domestic violence, it is so horrible. It is a cycle. Yeah. So you have let me talk quickly about the cycle. So domestic violence is happening with a cycle, a man and a woman together, normally male and female, whether they're married or they're in a relationship, a sexual relationship. And again, domestic violence is about power and control. This man or this woman sees the other person as their property. So it then, there is escalation, there's quarreling, there's controlling behavior. So there's multiple, and a lot of people just see domestic violence as just the hitting. Right. That's the physical. Way before that happens, there's the emotional. There's the calling name, you're fat, you're sloppy, nobody's going to want you. Just really bringing the person down. Then there's the psychological abuse. The abuse that, when, for example, the person is not, say, if it's without the BVI, the person is not from here and they're here illegally, I'm going to report you. If they know some secret about the person, I'm going to tell that secret publicly, make them start to brainwash them, you are really the problem. Or they do their devices, they somehow break into the devices so they can track to make themselves, I am all seeing, I'm everywhere. It makes the person really paranoid. Yeah. Financial abuse. They don't let them work or they have to bring their check to them. All of these things are financial abuse. They can't buy anything without this person knowing. Sexual abuse. They either make them sell their body to bring money home. They can also, what they can do is they can make the person do sexual acts that this person is not comfortable doing. Or they go ahead and have unprotected sex out there and come home and have the nerve to have sex with their partner or spouse and not tell them, I am cheating. So you bring home STDs, possibly HIV. Then there is, again, then you have the isolation. They don't let them go to their family, their friends. There's so many things. And then we have the violence where they're kicking, screaming, pushing, pulling, dragging. They kill, the animals, just so many different things. And the cycle is a cycle. So the tension builds up. And then the person's scared, walking on eggshell, then it explodes. Then they buy them flowers, take them to dinner. Let's go Puerto Rico. Let's go to the States. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
But it is short-lived. It's a pattern. So then after that happens, guess what happened? It seemed the honeymoon, and then you come back to the same thing. You know something is going to happen, but when it's...
You don't know when.
It's
yeah.
calm. The calm before the storm. It comes and then it happens. But what happens is it's like a tornado. And every time it comes around, say it used to be once a year, it comes around sooner and it's more violent.
Yeah.
Then it's every 6 months. Then it's every 3 months. Every 6 weeks. Every 2 weeks. As it comes
You
around,
just don't know. Yeah.
it becomes more violent. And
Yes.
that is why we have to have passion about it. That's why we have to be educated. And I want to say this last thing. Men who batter their spouses or their wives, you must understand that you're impacting your children. If your son sees you beating his mother, it is a norm for him. He will go out and beat
He will
on
do the
people.
same.
He will do violent acts in the community. If your daughter sees you beating her mother, she will accept a relationship where a man is abusing her. And then sometimes, I don't want no one hitting my son, I'll do this and that. But that is what you told her it is okay. And you're trying to convince her why she shouldn't be in that type of relationship. And she's on, Daddy, what's wrong with you? That's what you do to mommy all of the time. So we then, again, so this thing affects society. These children go to school, so they're battered, they're very abusive. I don't want to take up too much time, but it is just a pattern. And I'll just share with you this last thing for real. I'm quite well degree. But one of my background, I have a degree in meteorology. So what would happen is a tornado develops, and the best way to understand about violence, a tornado develops when warm, humid air comes under cold, dense air. And then the warm air, again, a person who's angry, have the nerve to rise through the cold air. And in rising through the cold air, they have different speed. So with this, what is called a mesocyclone, they start to turn, and they start to turn, and they start to turn. And with that, it becomes too heavy to keep turning this way, so it slowly or rapidly descends. And what does a tornado do? It destroys everything in its path. So when you get into domestic violence, it destroys the marriage, it destroys the children, it destroys his family, it destroys, you buy television, house, a car, and you destroy.
Everything falls apart.
And it doesn't have to happen. So men need to be educated, women need to be educated, and children need to be educated.
And
our
society
community
needs to be
need
educated.
to be educated. It is not that family's problem. It is
Everybody's
all of
problem.
our problem.
I
All of
totally
us.
agree. I totally agree. I don't know. The way that I am could be a little radical, and
You are radical.
that's how it is. But for me, for me, when it comes to, I decide how I'm gonna spend my money when it comes to affecting things. And some people say, oh, you're making a business fall apart or whatever. But for me, I would never go to that place of business again. I'm not gonna spend my money there because just the way he dealt with his wife, the way that I understand he deals with his employees, and just his overall general attitude, I don't think I should empower him any more than he already is. So I wouldn't spend my money there. That's how I would deal with it. Guys, if there's any last thing you want to say?
Well, I just want to elaborate that the police, law enforcement, we are very serious when it comes to domestic violence. And it's something that's a passion for me. With my experience and training that I have, I make sure that these things are done on a daily basis, because it's just too much, too much. And we will like, the BVI in a whole, to be on board with the police and support the police with these matters, whatever services are there for victims and also for abusers, because as Pastor just talked about, the cycle. If there are nothing there to help, any sort of counseling to help an abuser, the cycle will always be repeating.
Yeah.
So this is another conversation again we have to have, not just for the 16 weeks partnership for peace program for victims, for women, but also for the abusers, because he will continue to do what he knows best.
Yeah.
And we will still have that problem. So again, I would encourage persons, if they want to reach out to me, to call my unit, mobile 368-9904. you can call and speak to us if there are any issues, or if you see a neighbor or know of a family who's in an abusive situation, call. Don't just sit back and expect sometimes the victim to call, because remember I said earlier, most victims doesn't want to call the police and report because they're in love with their partner. And they would not call until something seriously happened to them that the police now have to step in, which could have been prevented or avoided. So with that, thank you, Cindy, and
Thank you for
having me today.
Thank you. Anything? Or?
Anything I'll say to anyone that is going through, I'll want to encourage them that you are not in this by yourself. There is help here in the BVI. There's several trained counselors, there's several agencies, FSN. Again, I used to work there, I deal with them. You can call Miss Charles, Judith Charles will really help. You can call 542-2085, I think that's the number. You can call social development at government 468-3701. You can call Brother Bobb. I work with him also at his unit. Again, you can call. And also, if you are going through a situation on neighbor hairs, call 311 and report it. Also, again, myself as a counselor, you can call a local church 340-8242 or visit us online for help. But again, you need help. I've known situations where people had to change their identity because of the stuff the person was threatening them and different stuff. You know, after I was doing my degree, you had to do training under other counselors. I mean, I can just tell you guys stories, not only locally but internationally. But there is help. Don't go through alone. Make sure to call somebody and seek help.
Thank you, Apostle Fahie, for being here, and thank you, Sergeant Bobb. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to wrap up.
Thank you for having me.
Business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Public justice requires government to positively intervene in both preventing and responding to domestic violence. Domestic violence is not just an individual or even a family issue, but a problem that has the capacity to have negative consequences on society. Negative developmental impacts on children exposed to trauma impacts their schoolwork and mental health. Survivors of domestic abuse may suffer the consequences of lost wages and lost financial support from an abusive spouse or partner. Government's policies should aim to uphold the integrity and social viability of families which do not exist in a social, economic, or political vacuum. Public policy should therefore take carefully into account the ways that other institutions and the dynamics of society impact families positively and negatively from the earliest stages of family formation on through to the last stages of elder care. Thus, government's responsibility goes beyond merely criminalizing domestic violence and prosecuting offenders, although this is essential. Government ought to intervene on the front end to uphold healthy, non-abusive marital and family relationships through provision of grant programs that aim to provide education and counseling for marriage, as well as to provide funding for community education aimed at raising awareness of the signs of domestic violence. Government's role in upholding public justice requires the government to address domestic violence holistically and preventatively wherever possible by forming partnerships with the best providers of service, faith-based and secular, to prevent domestic violence in the first place, and also to restore survivors to physical, spiritual, and financial wholeness. It is extremely difficult and most of the time unsafe for victims of domestic violence to pack up their things and leave without a plan or a place to go. Especially when children are involved and the abuser is economically tied to them. Governmental grants that support organizations that provide shelter, hotlines, counseling, and other essential needs of those living in domestic violence are necessary and beneficial. Safety net programs like food assistance, temporary housing, and childcare vouchers might not be the support that one first thinks of for domestic violence victims, but they can be crucial in providing the economic stability that is necessary for victims to feel as though they are stable enough on their own to leave the abusive situation. At the end of the day, there should never be any reason whatsoever to get physical with anyone. As a society, a small-knit one, there should be zero tolerance attitude towards domestic violence, whether it be women, men, children, and or elderly. We as a society must do all that we can do to stand up for victims, ensure their safety, petition government to do better through legislation and through funding. Funding, however, should not be left only to government, but we should exercise charity by giving to organizations supporting these causes so that they continue to be able to support these victims. In closing, I want to admonish each of us to be each other's keeper, to truly be each other's keeper, especially at this time. We are all going through stresses, but there are those suffering more. Pay attention, be kind, check in on your family member, your friend, co-worker, and neighbor. As mentioned earlier, this is an issue that we will focus on again in the second season of Cut Deep during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you for tuning in with me tonight. Join me next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. for episode 5 of Cut Deep.